philosopher, studied environmental science. She worked in Vancouver planning department as well, and was there during 9/11 when she first realized that the world was not what she thought. And then ended up at the age of 47 figuring out what she wants to be when she grows up. There we go.
And that is?
And that is to be here with all of you fine young people. And the old fuddy-duddies too. Okay, Denise, take it away.
Woo. All right. Yeah, I like writing that line. Thanks. Can you record that, Judy? I want my kids to see that somebody gave you an applause. It's fantastic.
I have a voice recording.
Oh, okay, good. I love that too. Okay, so yeah, absolutely crazy times we're in. Does everybody kind of remember what we were doing like 3 years ago?
Not normal.
Yeah, totally different than now.
Travel.
And travel and all that stuff. Who here? You
Having a job.
just having
$50 an hour.
having a job. Who here had a job that no longer has a job? Put up your hand. Or knows somebody who had a job who now no longer has a job? Yeah. Who here knows somebody that has, how do I say this, lost family members or friends? You or know somebody who has throughout this crazy time? Yeah. Well, due to anything in the last couple of years. Could be anything.
Yes.
We'll take that. I mean, there's regular life, and then there's kind of this added thing that's been given to us.
I haven't seen anything from COVID.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it. Let's keep it that way.
Yes.
Who here knows anybody that is just feeling overall anxious, stressed, no longer quite certain about their future? You or anyone you know. It's all a little different. So, first of all, the main thing that all of you are doing right is when all that crazy stuff is happening, you got to find your people. It was kind of easier earlier for me to find the people, my people, because they were the people that would let me in even with my mask exemption. I was like, okay, you're my people. And then there's other people who were very, very scared. Well, they're my people too, but they were so full of fear that they couldn't see past that fear. And what I'm really hoping that we can do is try to make sense of how we got to this place where we are today and how to move forward from there. So let's just get into it. Basically what we're gonna go over is values that are all over the world that we share and universal truths, right? We're gonna talk about regaining lost wisdom. We're gonna talk about the roots of the Christian worldview. And then we're going to do an exercise about discerning motives. Motives for everything, policies, political slogans, all these things. So first of all, how the heck did we get here? Y'all thought, I had a 10-year plan. I've got 3 kids. I knew where they were going to go to university. I knew our retirement plan. I had all that laid out. I was going to have my mom move in and retire with me, and all those things were gone. Actually, in light of all that, we just found out we can no longer continue to work in our 2 professions here, so we found a place in Texas where we can go. So we're going to be doing that for a while. So that's a big life change. Didn't think I'd be doing that 20 years ago. So this is kind of a lot what life looked like. Remember that? Just fun parades, family, sports. The number one thing was sports and arguing over Trump. I kind of miss those days. Then compared to today, although granted, Bonnie Henry's kind of rolled back some things, so we can go back to some of what we used to have. But I just remember being absolutely heartbroken last summer when we looked at all the playgrounds, and that's what it looked like. And I knew kids who were friends of my kids who hadn't left the house in a year because their parents were so scared that they were gonna get something, or like my mom was kept away from the family for fear that something was going to happen to her. 1 to 2 years life lost. So obviously some of that leads to some of these feelings of despair. If it's not you, it's going to be somebody you know. No matter where you stand on this issue, we're all kind of going through it. This is one of the first times in world history where everyone around the world is being subjected to these changes. And of course, despair, it includes all these feelings, right? Just sort of hopelessness, like you're trapped. You got to make a choice. If I was either going to fly home or stays trapped in Kelowna for 2 weeks. So just kind of, yeah, feeling trapped. Feeling alone, isolated, feeling afraid. So just everybody here, what's kind of the opposite of those feelings? What's the opposite of despair, would you say? Happiness. Yeah, okay, happiness.
Free.
Just free, feeling free. Yeah, what else? What else is like the opposite of that? Joy. Yeah.
Friendship.
Joy, friendship, going out, all those things, yeah.
Hope.
Hope, in a word, being empowered. One of the opposites of feeling in despair is feeling empowered. And like many of you in this room have already come to be aware, that's not entirely accidental or incidental. When we're stuck with feelings of despair, we're more prone to apathy and inaction. I don't know if you guys have heard this great lady who does interviews. Her name is Laura Lynn. She had on a guest who had lived through the communist regime, and she said communism needs 3 things to flourish. That's apathy, cowardice, and compliance. All 3 of those things are incredibly easy to get when you can have people feeling unmotivated, hopeless, trapped, angry, and scared. So some of what we talk about today is going to be a little bit heavy, but I think, especially given the fact that we've had this amazing turnout and all of you are here exactly where you're meant to be, that we're going to flip all that and all end up here. And I'm hoping if we can do that, we can go out and be salt and light and do that for all the other people who aren't quite there yet. So let's see if we can do that. So yeah, universal truths. Universal truth, this is the idea that it includes or applies to everyone without exception. Anybody can throw one out? What's something that you consider a universal truth? Death. Death and taxes, that's pretty universal. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else that's like, across all cultures, across all religions that we could generally all agree on?
I mean, water sometimes, but it's always not necessarily clean.
Okay.
For certain groups.
So like needing water for life, yeah. Gravity. Okay, so these are like universal laws of the universe. I'm after like values that kind of encourage you to act a certain way.
I can't think of a society that would think it's okay to like murder or steal.
Murdering
so
or
there's a lot
stealing.
of crimes that I think are pretty universally not tolerated.
Yeah.
Almost every society looks frowns upon incest.
Incest. That's another one. Yeah. So there's some fairly common taboos that are across all cultures. Yeah.
Just treat everyone the way you want to be treated.
That's a good one.
Pretty
I
basic.
think there's one universal thing we all seem to know everywhere in the world I've been, we all seem to know and have the capacity to love. It seems a little absent now, but love is something we all seem to have.
Yeah.
Fortnite is bad.
Fortnite?
It's bad.
It's bad. I don't know, my son. I don't know. He might not be with you there, but I'll have to.
Probably is.
I love it. Okay. So yeah, basically we all have an idea of what are essentially universal truths. What did I want to say about that? Oh yeah. So that one example, and we see it a lot of places, like, actually I'll just put a picture of it. So we all basically agree that if you could choose, we'd want to be a part of a world that has a lot of these things, and we'd generally like to stay away from a world that has a lot of those things.
Oh my gosh.
So the question is, I don't know, has anybody here heard of Jordan Peterson?
Woo!
Woo! Okay, I love it. I love it. 4 years ago, I had no idea who he was. I didn't have a particular religion or direction in life, and I had this idea, though, that, everyone will just be kind. If everyone could just be kind, the world would turn out well. And Jordan Peterson spent the bulk of his life trying to study what is evil. Like, what is it that allows a human being, like just somebody in this room, could be any one of us, to go from acting out their daily life to being someone who's able to inflict pain and torture on somebody. What made that possible? And there's this guy, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who spent time in the Gulag Archipelago, and he had been tortured for over 10 years. And The incredible thing about that wasn't so much that he lived through it to write a book, but it was that he said the bulk of that torture happened from fellow inmates who weren't paid and who were actually there voluntarily. There was at some point in that Gulag camp where there was millions of people being sequestered, the government didn't have enough resources. There was zero oversight. Those overseers could have walked away at any time, and they didn't. They kept it going for 10 years. I'm not going to go into the awful things they did, but the big revelation that guy got out of all that time there, because he had a lot of time to think and nothing to write with, was what was something that he might have done that ended him up there, right? He kept looking around, well, how could that guy do this? And how could that guy do this? And then he started saying, well, what did I do to get here? And he looked back in his life and he saw there was a series of times where he actually did things that contributed to this system, this huge machine that just sucked innocent humans in and churned them out like they were nothing. Any ideas what that might be? There's a few things. Okay, we're going to get into that. And then we're going to come right out of it. What were you going to say?
Compliance.
Compliance? Compliance with what?
Cowardice and apathy.
Yes. To what? Cowardice away from what?
Love.
Doing what instead? What?
Away from love.
Away from love? Yes.
Understanding.
Selective disregard. People choose this sort of person, this group, doesn't deserve respect, so it's okay to set a precedent of excluding or disrespecting them, but that precedent grows and
It's like
grows.
1937.
Yeah. Like there's this saying, right? Choose kind unless you don't agree with my version of kind, in which case you're canceled. Or we just send you off to the Gulag.
Or we freeze your bank.
Or we freeze your bank. That's exactly, you're getting to it. So Greg at the back there had said compliance. So another interesting thing that Jordan Peterson pointed out was that Nazi Germany, when they were loading up the Jews and hauling them off in train cars, that didn't just happen overnight. It happened the very first day that one citizen saw something in their country that shouldn't be happening, and they didn't speak up. They went, well, it's probably just a couple weeks to flatten the curve, then we'll go back to normal. Oh, they're just removing Jews' rights temporarily, but I'm sure it'll come back to normal. And the second you don't stand up when your conscience, no matter what your beliefs is, when that little voice in there says that something's wrong, the second you don't speak up, your strength and your posture is now bent a little bit. And the next time you're asked to do another thing that your conscience doesn't agree with, you're that much weaker to being able to resist that thing. Until finally, after years, and I can't believe I'm now saying years, over 2 years now, the next time you're asked to do something, you're bent over so far that even though you want to stand up straight and say no, it's too late. That's what Alexander Solzhenitsyn figured out. And he wrote a book called Live Not by Lies. Sorry, he didn't write the book. That was his famous quote. And another guy's made that in without a vaccine passport, because my son and me can't get vaccinated. And the first thing the manager of the hockey team said, look, I don't really care about your beliefs. This is about science. So we're going to do the science, and you can just do whatever beliefs. What she meant was behavior that you want. But she misconstrued that and saw that as a belief. Nietzsche kind of taught to, I don't know, he's this famous philosopher. I can't read him. I don't know, for those of you that listen to Jordan Peterson, I could take one sentence of his and spend like hours unpacking it. Well, for him, that's what Nietzsche does for Jordan Peterson. So I've really tried to read that thing, and I can't. But what Jordan Peterson was able to pull out of that was this idea that even Nietzsche thought that humans would be better off without God, and that they could choose their own values. Create the uber-human, he called it. So we can all agree that kindness is amazing. It's going to work. We can all agree that we want love and joy. That's going to be good too. And the thing that Peterson pointed out was that there's an interesting thing about values. We think that we choose them, but in fact, values choose us. And I'll give you an example. Just stop and think about what interests you in the world. Can I come over and say, I want to tell you about the 40-day life cycle of grasshoppers, and I need you to spend 5 years researching that in every minute detail and then get back to me? And you'll be really, it's really interesting. Anyway, this is really interesting. You guys are gonna love this. Yeah. So we can't choose what we're interested in. What does your conscience bother you about? Is it the same for everyone? I have a friend who, anytime she sees a spider, she stops what she's doing, gets out her little teapot or whatever, and she'll walk a mile or row a boat to get that spider to shore. And then I've got other people that'll just pluck out the legs and leave it there and go, I can't feel anything anyway. So our conscience bothers us about different things. So it's going to be really tough to figure out what that Uberman is going to be. And in all of his studying and research, Nietzsche finally came to the fact, oh my gosh, if we let this continue to happen, if we remove this idea of an overseeing moral authority that's there to tell us what's right and wrong, and is there to remove from us the idea of judgment and condemning somebody, if there's no overseer or abstract meta idea up above, then humans are going to step up and do it. And before it happened, he predicted the mass genocide of millions and millions of people. So at first, he was one of the strongest critics of the Judeo-Christian worldview and the need for a God, and he later became the biggest proponent. So, and yeah, 4 years ago when I first heard that idea, I was a complete atheist. And it wasn't until I kind of went, oh. And then Peterson had this great thing, and it's really hard for me to get away from it. He said, what if we just live as though God exists? There's this famous saying, wisdom begins with fear of the Lord. Anybody yeah? All not sure. So, it's really interesting. They did some experiments with people where they put $100 in the middle of the table, and then everybody would walk out, and then they stopped and recorded how many people would just take the $100 bill. And then they had somebody, and they said, oh, okay, well, yeah, we've got cameras in the room. We'll just leave that there and see what happens. And as you could imagine, the rate of taking the $100 bill went down. I love it. Anyway, so the whole point there is, or think of a time in your life, I guess, where you had an opportunity. If you had an opportunity to do something and nobody would ever know and no one would find out, it would never hurt them, would you be willing to do it, to carry out that act?
Question for you real quick. It's like the hand in the cookie jar.
Yes.
So it's like, okay, so if nobody's looking at you when you put your hand in the cookie jar, you think it's okay. But do you not see yourself put your own hand in that cookie jar?
There's a point. You can never lie to yourself, although people try.
That's the morality of a person. The only morality is a fear of punishment.
The only morality is fear of punishment. That's interesting. That's actually a whole other lecture. We're going to get into that.
We're not going to get into it,
But that's the point, is if you know you're always being watched, you're less likely to do harm to other people. And when you think you're God, you're in control of the video game or the rules, then we know what happened. Anybody see that movie Inside Out?
No.
You saw it too? Yeah.
I watched it on Disney Plus, which I have on my Chromecast.
Yeah, I love Disney Plus, and I love Inside Out because it's a great thing to kind of show. I don't know if you know, there's this, oh yeah, I got a little. Oh yeah, beliefs, that's okay. Choose kind, yeah. Humans guide your behavior. Oh yeah, so movie Inside Out. This is the one. So for those who haven't seen it, for this story, I was thinking, well, it's two brothers, blah, 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 the murder's together, murder's bad, yeah, we all know that. I don't need a God to tell me that, just don't do it. Then I heard him explain it this way. So a lot of you, everyone here knows Cain and Abel or something, at least heard of who the guys are. Okay. So here's the way he said it, that it was two brothers, and both of them are offering a sacrifice to God. Now, other than knowing that one's made of meat and one's made from plants, we don't really know anything else about it, but what we do know is God only accepts one of them. And we're not told why. There's probably a lot of reasons for why we're not told why. And then the one who had his offer rejected had a lot of time to just sit and stew on it, become bitter and angry and resentful. To the point where he spent all of his time coveting the other brother. Well, what does the other brother have that I don't have? I worked harder. I'm older. I should get something. What does he have that I don't have?
Jealousy and envy.
Well, he didn't start out jealous and envious, but I'm glad you brought that up, because with enough time to think about how life is unfair, that did lead him exactly that, to feel jealous and envious and bitter and resentful. This resentful thing, it's funny, the more reading you do all across all cultures, you can't have evil without a combination of resentment and arrogance. Yeah. Yeah, hatred. So finally, Abel gets his brother alone in the field, kneels over, reaches over and gets a rock and has him like this and smashed it. And that's when I realized. That's when I went, this is my story. I'm 47 years old now, and when I was 6 years old, not quite 6, I think I had a month to go. I didn't have the best upbringing. I spent most of my time poor. Everybody else had My Little Pony and all these other great things to play with. I got taken out of that home and brought to this nice neighborhood. So I'm in a beachfront neighborhood and I'm having a good time. I finally get to like do whatever I want. There's food on the table. That was amazing. I was having a great day. Until this little girl who's 5 walks over and goes, "What's wrong with your shoes? You have dirt on your feet. You're poor." And I was like, "No, I'm not." Yell, "Yeah, my mom could beat up your mom." And what she didn't know is she hit at the heart of something really powerful to me, because my mom, I had a mom, but she wasn't around and she wasn't there for me. So without that girl knowing what she did, she stripped down everything that was good about that day and just gutted my heart. And on top of that, she's like, yeah, I have My Little Pony and you don't have it. And that was it. All those years of pain and resentment that I've been feeling, I found an outlet for it, and I grabbed her. I grabbed her by the throat and I held her down, and I was reaching over for a rock. I found one, it wasn't very big. And I was like this, and I don't know what happened, or God's grace again, I guess, but that little girl managed to get away. But if she didn't, she wouldn't be here today, and neither would I. And I thought, oh, just as Jordan Peterson got to that point of the story, with the rock over top of his brother, in a book that we know is at least 3,000 years old, and Jordan Peterson says there's good evidence to show that that oral tradition of that story has likely been going on for much, much, much longer. So here you have a story that could be as much as 25,000 years old. The first recorded history of a murder by the first children of Adam and Eve, the very first 2 people in the world, and that's what they do. And I thought, oh, so this book that I was super quick to dismiss, I thought, okay, maybe there's something there for me. I went back and looked at a picture of myself when I was 6, and I haven't been able to look at that picture for like 41 years. And because I just went, I hated that childhood, I hated the kid I was, I hated everything about that. But then I heard that story and I went, oh, it's not just me. And not only was it not me, but like, was Cain necessarily the bad guy? Like, what's the moral of the story, right? It's not that murder is wrong. That's not the moral of the story. It's life is always going to bring you situations that are unfair. It's going to force you to deal with things you don't deserve, and it's going to give amazing gifts to people who don't deserve them. But the question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to get resentful and angry or bitter, or is there a better way? Yeah.
Always try and see a positive in a negative situation.
Wow. Always try to see the positive. So if you're going through hell, anybody got an example of where you went through absolute hell and then you figured out?
If you got in a car accident, for example,
Yeah.
and the car could be totaled, but did you live?
Ah.
Right? Always just trying to see a positive anytime in a negative situation.
Yeah. So that takes some discipline
Rob.
to do that. You